Well, after not making a video last week for the first time in a long time, you're all pretty much ready to send a nuke at my house. But please don't do that. Let me explain what happened in the Austrian Grand Prix, not the French Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the last week's podcast, then you will enjoy this week's video. Longer video this week. As I say, hope you enjoy. So, let's go back to what my predictions were on Friday. Let's have a listen to those. I recorded this. This is something new. I might do it. I might never do it again. Hey, Friday Jack here. Hello. It is predictions time. So I think Red Bull will win the race with Verstappen, Perez in 5th after a mistake. I think that Mercedes will come in 2nd and 3rd. I think that McLaren will be 4th with Lando. Ferrari, I think, will be sort of mid-table, 7th, 8th. AlphaTauri, I think they're going to have a shocker of a race just like last year. Aston Martin, I think they'll be nowhere. I think Kimi will be faster than both the Aston Martin drivers. Let's see. Alpine, I think Alonso will continue to be a high point scorer, mid point scoring. 7th, 8th place, that sort of thing. Alfa Romeo, Kimi will be not in the points, but I'd say 11th or 12th. He'll be consistently scoring good points. Or close to good points. Williams, I think they'll be scoring their first points of this season this weekend. I think 8th. I think they'll be 8th this weekend. 8th or 9th, depending on where Alonso comes in, depending on how strong he is. Haas, Nikita Mazepin will spin, and Mick Schumacher will be ahead of him by the end of the race. Alright, let's see how these predictions went. I'd like to talk about car performance for just a moment here. First thing to go after the race, obviously, speaking about this after the race, Williams. Obviously, they did not get the points that I suspected they would, but they were definitely a threat at the sort of top of the midfield. I mean, there was about a 5-lap stretch where it looks like our man, George Russell, was getting past Alonso. Now, this was odd, because George Russell had been reporting problems all throughout the race. So Ricciardo, he had an excellent start, got to 9th place from his 13th place start. But then an engine problem with everything. The entire engine shut off for 3 seconds, and he was in the wrong gear. Everything was just poor. I watched the onboard after that. Not great what happened there. But George Russell suffered a similar problem with a fluid leak that was not leaking onto the track, so no safety car, but the fluid leak was internal in the car. So they were topping up the fluid every other lap after his first pit stop. Really sad. George should have been in the points today. Williams would have jumped Alfa Romeo in the championship and been 8th. I still think there are definitely more chances for Williams to get points this season. It's just a shame that Mercedes engine troubles have relegated them pointless yet again. And this is sort of a recurring theme. I mean, not engine troubles, but the last time they were in the points, Mercedes took them out of the points with an egregious move for Bottas, knocking Russell out of the points. Back to Haas, where their car performance is 0. Although I heard pre-race, this is quite funny, Günther Steiner gave a spinning top to Nikita Mazepin to show him and tell him to stop spinning. I guess he's probably figured out the meme by now that we all know he's a spinner, crasher. Who knows? Anyways, Mick Schumacher, okay race. I mean, at least he finished ahead of the Maz, but really not great. I mean, look, he's proving himself by getting ahead of Mazepin in these races. Obviously, last race was an outlier. But I still think that he has more to prove in that car. I think he needs to get closer to points. With George Russell presumably getting closer to points, I think that he needs to maybe even score. I mean, I know the car is a jalopy, but still, he should score or get close to scoring this year. Let's get to the race. Early part of the race was quite interesting, I'll say. What I'll say first is Verstappen's definitely studying his Michael Schumacher race starts, because Michael Schumacher has this sort of customary chop across that he does when he's on pole position. It always really stops the progress of the driver who's in second place trying to attack him. It was this thing he did in 2003, a year where Ferrari was on the back foot for most of that season, behind McLaren and Williams. So Verstappen sort of doing that. Not the first race that he's done that this season. He did it, I think, last race and Imola as well. He's just getting better at it. It's something that, as he grows his reputation, more people will bring that sort of similarity, their starts, to light. Anyways, back to the start of the race. Now, it was an interesting start because, as well as Verstappen doing the chop, Bottas got past Perez, which was a shame, and Norris was also attacking Perez, which was odd. I thought Perez would be stronger at the start. He wasn't. Eventually, Norris fell back, and later on, he sort of sat around, was lapped by the end of it, and ended in 5th. My Ferrari prediction was interesting because I was close with them. They were 6th and 7th by the end of it, and Leclerc had a storming drive after smacking into Gasly. He was a bit too over-aggressive the first lap, Leclerc, and I was definitely disappointed to see where he ended up after that. But he said this is one of the best drives of his career, and I completely back that up. I agree with that. Not much else to say other than really impressive from Leclerc today, even though his start was certainly less than impressive. Stroll in 8th. His start was not great, but then again, he's in this car that's fine but not great. It's a weird position to be in. If you're in a car that's bad, you have an excuse. Yet he's in the sort of position where he doesn't really have an excuse, yet he can't really be fighting for the positions where the team wants him to be. Yet Vettel was behind him again today, which is, although we sort of acclimatized to it, I think this time last year, saying that Vettel would be behind Stroll and they'd be racing in the same car would be a foreign notion. It baffles me that he's still behind Stroll. He definitely has, time to make up. He's got to make up a whole lot of stuff this year. I don't know how he's going to come back from this. He's definitely down right now. But let's go back and talk about Alonso, who was in 9th. He had a great race today. He held off a charging George Russell in the Williams. Whatever the Williams has done to unlock that potential, they are fast down the straightaways, and they can keep up through the corners, which is a first for them in a really long time. So I think overall, they're just very impressive right now. Not much else to say about them. Alonso did a very good job keeping the George Russell behind him, so as to say, impressive with that. Although he did lose a place, he qualified 8th. Tsunoda 10th. Tsunoda's a weird one because he's sort of a driver that, my co-host podcast-wise rates very highly, but I don't rate him as highly. I think he's a good driver, but not a great driver, and it's hard to judge him, but he's not the best in my opinion, at least. Anyways, let's talk about Raikkonen. He had an excellent race today. So Kimi started in 18th after a really shocker of a qualifying, and although I say he's the greatest qualifier of all time, he drove some qualifying type laps in that Alfa Romeo and really came back today. He passed Vettel by the end of it. His tires stayed good throughout the entirety of the race. Really impressive from him. Speaking of Vettel, he's right behind Kimi, and along with Vettel, right behind him is Ricciardo. Interesting situation for both of them. Vettel had a Vettel race. Really surprising to see him outside the points. Really surprising to see him behind Stroll, but that's how his luck's going right now. Ricciardo, 13th, he had the Mercedes engine problem, as I said, shut off for 3 seconds in the wrong gear, it all went wrong for him. Ocon, 14th, they need answers with Ocon. He's way behind Alonso, and he's just not catching up. It happened with Ricciardo, but now he's really proving to be not the driver they thought he was, especially considering he just got re-signed for 3 years. They need to figure out what's going on with him. Giovinazzi directly behind him, along with Mick Schumacher behind Gio. Latifi had another shock of a race. He was smacked into by Gasly and Leclerc. Just a terrible start to the race. Not his fault. He could have been within the top 10 maybe. Sort of disappointing how that ended for him. Maz Truck. How is Mazepin doing? He is last. Brilliant. George Russell and Gasly both didn't qualify because they didn't get to the end or to the halfway point of the race, so they're not counted for that race. That's pretty much all we've got to talk about for the actual positions. of the drivers. Interesting strategy from Perez to go for that 2-stop. Didn't work in the end, but Bottas was really scared. Another lap, Perez definitely would have been by him, and it would have been a 1-3 for Red Bull rather than a 1-4. They still got more points than Mercedes this race, so not that disappointing. But nonetheless, it's really important to remember those sorts of gaps really can decide small bits of the Constructors' Championship come the end of the year. Red Bull needs to be careful and remember those sorts of things, and not just give up position. Could they have overtaken him on their previous strategy? I don't think so. But, Perez is the tire whisperer. We don't know. He was catching him, and he got within 1.5 seconds by the time that he pitted. In my opinion, I would not have pitted him, but, that's that. Verstappen ended up winning the race by a margin that is unseen in Austria history. 38 seconds. Obviously, Adrian Newey has created a monster of a car here, but I think we need to be asking, what is Mercedes doing to catch up? I mean, obviously, they might try to develop, but Red Bull hasn't done much development this year other than the flappy wing and their new skinny rear wing, which helps them with speed on the straightaways. They haven't done much. It's really been them relying on their underlying car downforce, and with that, in the Honda engine, they're fast. My question is, what can Mercedes do to come back? I don't think much at this point. Obviously, I'm not counting Hamilton out, especially not this early in the season. He really came back in years like 2016, 2017, 2018. Maybe not by this much of a margin, but he definitely came back. I think by the end of the season, it will be much closer than this, but not in the Constructors' Championship. Bottas, in my opinion, is struggling too much, and I don't see them coming back from that. And I know only a couple of days ago I had said, this is before the French Grand Prix, that I had expected them to lose the Constructors' Championship. Things happen, and look where we are now. They just dominated 2 Mercedes-friendly tracks. I don't see them losing the Constructors at this point. That would be a much bigger disappointment, them losing the Constructors, than them losing the drivers at this point. Not much really else to say about that. Yeah, really good race. Next weekend, I expect this sort of a race or better. Obviously, they've had, recon. They know what's going on for next weekend, so maybe there'll be a bit less of the overtakey. But we'll see. I'm hopeful. I think we have a good race on the cards for them. I think Red Bull is going to do well. I think predictions-wise, let me run through the teams right now, actually. Yet again, we have discarded an excellent segment This Week in F1. No, This Week in F1, not this next week, not after that, not until we've gone to Silverstone. I don't think I'm going to do a This Week in F1. Anyways, we'll see though. Alrighty, so, predictions. Let's go team by team. Red Bull will win the race. Perez in second. Hamilton will struggle. Bottas will crash. Verstappen will win the race. McLaren will get close to the podium, but they will not be on it, and Ricciardo will be the one closer. He will be ahead of Lando. He will have a better qualifying than Lando, and therefore he will stay ahead in the race. Ferrari, Leclerc is going to have an excellent race. I think 5th. Yeah, I think that's going to be something that we see from him. Gasly and Tsunoda, AlphaTauri. I don't know. I think Tsunoda will struggle lower or maybe just out of the points. Gasly, I think he can be close to the top. I suspect from him about 7th, 6th place in qualifying. In the race, 7th, 6th place. Aston Martin, I see Stroll really struggling, and I see Vettel struggling, both out of the points. Alpine, I think Ocon will be out of the points, and I think Alonso will be just barely in. Williams will be just in the points. I think 9th or 8th. For Williams, Latifi will be out of the points. Alfa Romeo, Kimi will have an excellent drive but be out of the points. And both of the Haas cars will be out of the points. Those are my predictions. Will I talk about the fact that I got them completely wrong next week? No, I will not. We will not be hearing about these predictions ever again. That's it. Anyways, before we go, I want to leave you with a final song. Not this one, something else, something special. But before I do that, I'd just like to say thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, like, subscribe. If you didn't, then don't. Again, thank you for watching. Goodbye. Max, 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 super, Max, Max, super, super, Max.
super max, super.